For this lore series, I decided to use any lore that I could find, and that includes the companion book, the website, the living world, and then also the regiment boxes, because the regiment boxes have a little bit of lore on each little regiment that you buy, sometimes the characters as well. Also, if you go on the eShop, you can find some lore. That's where I found the Priory Commander lore and was able to do the voiceover for that. So any lore that I could find that's been published by Para-Bellum, that's what I'm going to use in order to do these lore series. This first lore series or the first lore video that I'm doing here is going to be about the Old Dominion. So let's get on into the Old Dominion. The Old Dominion did not refer to the dominion of man, but the dominion of Hazlia, much to people's disbelief. The Old Dominion is located far to the east of the 100 Kingdoms, past the Clustering Mountains, beyond the desert waste. The southeast corner of the continent, basically. The capital city is called Capitus, and is located on the banks of the river Eos. When the dominion of Hazlia fell, mankind retreated to the town of Rus, which is across the Clustering Range. And this is just a little bit of reference to kind of when the Dominion fell and where kind of humanity went to in order to escape the Dominion. Which won't be something we'll go over until probably part 2 of the Old Dominion. To tell the story of the Old Dominion, we must first have to talk about who is Hazlia and how do you come into power. Hazlia and mankind's fate were intertwined. Some of the earliest records of mankind are held by the Dwagam, and it is said that the elder races ignored mankind as kind of a nuisance more than anything. So imagine these elder races that have, established communities, established holds and spires and stuff like that. And here comes mankind in their tribes just trying to find fire and warmth. And so the elder races pretty much ignored them. Because of this arrogance, mankind was able to thrive and grow unhindered for a long period of time. The earliest tribes of mankind were trying to find shelter anywhere that they could, and one of these tribes found a home in a Dwagam hold that was abandoned. These holds were abandoned by the Dwagam long ago, and the Dwagam would basically shut down everything and render all primordial essences inert. So basically nothing would be able to be used by anyone that came and settled into the hold later. Each forge, and there are a lot of forges in a hold, would house a primordial shard, basically, or primordial shards. And then in between some of the forges would be these moats where the primordial essence can flow between them and can be used to help build equipment and armor and spells and that sort of thing. But the Dwagam would make sure that everything was inert or dormant before they left. One of humanity's tribes had found a Dwagam hold, but inside they found a light in one of the forges, in one of the elemental forges to be exact. I think they call them dragon forges as well. But it was a primordial shard that was producing light and warmth. This tribe is later to be named the First Tribe, and they started to worship the shard. And as they worshiped the shard, they started to notice that the light and warmth grew in intensity over time. As they would worship and worship longer, they would worship, the more brighter, the warmer the shard would become. And as the people were worshiping and continuing to worship it, they'd gather more people and like, hey, this is warm and it's, bright. We can see down in here. So, come over here where this, this source of light and energy is. And they'd bring more people, and then more people would be worshiping the shard. And after a while, the First Tribe started to notice that the shard had a core to it. And then they started focusing on that core and started worshiping that core more specifically than just the overall shard itself. And as the focus of their worship was toward the core, it started to kind of redefine itself and concentrate its power into that core. And it started to shape and change its dimensions and its appearance. As the power and light grew to its kind of full intensity and full power, the shard and core started to whisper its name as Hazlia. And then now the First Tribe has the name of Hazlia and starts worshiping Hazlia. And again, it starts to transform Hazla and the essence of the shard more and more. And Hazla's power starts to grow, and soon his power grows so strong that he's able to infiltrate the primordial moats and around the forges, but he's still a prisoner of the forge, and he's still locked in that forge right now. As the first tribe grew, so did Hazla and his power. Hazla was influencing the first tribe and basically trying to teach them how to reverse engineer basically weapon and equipment that the Dwagam had left behind in the forges. And so the mankind advanced very quickly, very fast by like reverse engineering stuff from the Spire and the Dwagam. And they were very plentiful, and this time of growth was just immense, especially that it was still in the hold and that no one really knew what was going on yet. Because the more and more people that were worshiping him, the stronger and stronger Hazla started to get. But there was a problem. Hazla was still confined to the forge. He would have to influence the first tribe to leave the forge, and that would allow him to break free of his prison, of the forge prison. And so the first tribe kind of moved back towards the surface and moved out of the hold a little bit and moved away from the forges so that they could bring Hazla with them. And over time now, Hazla's transformed his appearance into a human form. And there was this really awesome quote in the book, the companion book, that talks about the power of belief and how this kind of happened. And so here's that quote.
The greatest Magi in the Old Dominion spoke of 3 rules of power. Belief is power, power calls to power, and power corrupts. They argued that these were the manifestations of the primordial nature of the universe, representing creation, balance, and destruction. While the elder races scoff at this assertion, mankind has known it to be real since the rise of the Dominion. They know them to be true because of the rise of the Dominion. When it comes to the power of belief, one must heed another caveat. While belief can be used as a tremendous source of power, it is intrinsically tied to the perception of the worshipper. In time, the more one draws deeply enough from this well of power, the more one slowly conforms to what the people believe. The power shapes them in the form of the worshipper's belief.
Now that Hazla has escaped his confinement of the forge, he's able to actually consume weaker essences and shards and primordial beings that he comes across. And so his power is now growing and growing and growing. And he's sharing all his information and growing his first tribe at the same time. And this is where the Dominion started. As the Dominion expands and it grows, that's when the town of Capitus was formed on the rivers of Eos, and this gave the Dominion a place of leadership. And as this is happening, Hazla comes up with this great idea of having, instead of him just controlling the Dominion and trying to lead everything, he decides to make a pantheon of deities in order to help rule the Dominion. And he comes up with 12 different roles for the pantheon. And here they are. The first is the father or ruler, then the mother, the knight, the seer, the fool or trickster, the crafter, the magi, the untamed, the lover, the wanderer, the victim, and the soldier. The companion book has a brief description of each one of these, kind of based on like text or lore, other things in the history of Ea. But I thought there was this nice, cool poem in The Soldier, and here's that poem.
Who bears the greatest burden, I wonder? The greatest king's head, a single crown it lies under. But who carries the scythe and who carries the spear? Who fought without choice, yet also fought without fear? The weight of history always fell on one shoulder. Hail the unsung hero, hail the unknown soldier.
Some of you might be thinking that these roles were filled by humans, but they were not. They were actually filled by other primordial beings that Hazla came across and decided to use. And Hazlia filled all of these roles except for two. He was not able to fill two of them because, now this is a quote, deep within the human psyche, these two roles were already taken by Niam and Cleo. Nayu? Sorry, my pronunciation's always bad. Naya, and Cleo. So all of these roles except for the mother and the warrior, which were filled by Niam and Cleo, were filled by these other primordial deities that Hazlia came across and decided to use and put into place in these different roles. At first, Hazlia really kind of ignored these two and decided to kind of do his own thing. But then as the Dominion grew and grew, he realized he needed to make an alliance with them and pull them in with him. And I think this is kind of where the brilliance of what Hazlia did comes into play, because he sought an alliance with Niam and Cleo, and the three would become this triumvirate of controlling the domain. And the three of them actually ruled for hundreds of years. However, over that time period, it became that the Hazlia grew in power, whereas Cleo and Niam kind of were relegated to like lesser deities. They were not worshipped like Hazlia was, and so that power belief wasn't with them as strong. And this is where Hazlia grew to be Hazlia, and everything else was underneath him from now on. And it was basically because he made the alliance and pulled the two of them in, and then said, hey, yes, we are the triumvirate. But I think that's where he was like, we are the triumvirate, but I am in charge, kind of a thing, you know? And I could just imagine him doing that, to like making the first tribe and all the people of mankind worship him in that triumvirate, of him being the ultimate, you know, top piece of that triangle piece, you know? I feel like he's the top point and the other guys are like the bottom points. And so that's where I think humanity started to worship him more, and he grew in power, where the two of them lessened in power. The Dominion grew to equal the power of both the Dwagam and the Spire, and so they became a threat now. And now these other races are looking at this Dominion and saying, oh, what did we, let go, and why weren't we paying attention to this for these hundreds of years? To continue this story about Hazlia and the Dominion and how they grew, we have to actually now take a step back again and look at the Nords and what's going on with the Nords before we can continue. So I'm going to stop this video here, and then we're going to go on to the Nords a little bit in the next video, and then kind of go into the hopefully the fall of the Dominion. But we'll see how far that goes, because I still haven't written the scripts or anything for the second part of this video yet. I'm still working on the research for it, so bear with me. This was a lot of fun to do, and there's going to be more coming. So keep on liking, subscribing, and checking out my channel, because you're going to see more.